Hey guys, it's a legend. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Real Quarantine Show. You know what? We've got a bit of a bonus for you because not only do we have a brand new episode, we have actually classic episodes. Because before we came to you, we were on another network and we played a bunch of cool shows. Andy, tell the people what you thought of those old shows.
It's all these shows are great. I mean, I always say, our what we do is for the love of the business. We've had great episodes. I've been able to talk with some of the guys from Puerto Rico about Puerto Rico memories. We've talked a lot of history. One of my favorites is talking not once but twice with the Tennessee stud Ron Fuller.
I mean, that's incredible. I would never have thought a year ago, a guy who loves wrestling history, that I would ever have a chance to actually talk and ask questions to the Tennessee stud. That was amazing. Elio, what kind of great memories do you have on this show?
Yeah, there are so many great episodes, and we've had a couple that come to mind. Of course, Continental, the Ron Fuller episodes, both times we had him on, as well as one of my favorites, the Madison Square Garden Glory Days.
Oh, yeah. And we've had some great people. We've had D'Lo Brown, Savio Vega. We've had some really fun guys. We've had some great old veterans. We've had some young up-and-coming stars. And that's what this show is, you're going to see in the future, is going to be all about that. We're going to encapsulate history. We're going to talk about topics of today. We're going to talk about the things that you guys want to talk about. And these little background, these classic episodes of ours, we'll go back, revisit some of the things we've done in the last year. And off and on, we'll be going forward with a whole bunch of new things. So we look forward to seeing you all. Welcome back to the Real Quarantine.
Hey fans, welcome back to another edition of WPOV Quarantine. I'm your host, the legend T. James Logan, and wow, what a struggle to get here, but we are here. And Zoom, if you can hear me, I'm not going to blame you. I'll break my computer. Anyhow, with us, our co-host as always this week, the lone wolf, Andy Anderson. Andy.
Always a pleasure.
And can't you just shut up for a few minutes, Elio Canella? Or is it Canellis? I'm not sure. Andy, what is it?
It depends what day it is. Depends what day it is.
Great to be here.
Can't remember your son's name.
It's like Rotunda Rotundo.
Oh, there's a legal precedent for that one, though. Anyhow, and welcoming to our show, our two guests this week, the returning Chief Atakula Kula. Chief, welcome back.
Always good to be here. Thank you.
Good to see you. And for the first time ever, D'Lo Brown. Welcome, D'Lo.
What's going on, guys? Pleasure to be on the show tonight. Let's kick back, have some fun. I've heard great things. Andy spoke highly, so I am looking forward to this.
Wow, I got to get him to talk better about things about me. Okay. Well,
I talk about Elio, not about you. So
you just probably talk. He always tries to take over the show, that Elio. Anyhow, this week we are talking about villains, heels, the bad guys, the guys who make you want to watch, make you want to hate them, make you want to get up, yell, swear. I always laugh that professional wrestling is the only thing where you can actually go into a crowd with people and give someone the finger and tell them to go F themselves. And it's cool. Nobody seems to care. Only in professional wrestling can you really do that. So let's talk about those people, though, that make you hate them. And we're also going to talk about the evolution, because it seems like the villains of yesterday, it's quite a bit different than villains today are looked at. And we're going to go through that and talk about some of our favorite villains. And we have two guys who are they're not strangers to portraying villains now and then. I know Chief, he's got that flip-flop depending where he is. Sometimes he's a good guy, but lots of times he's a bad guy. And D'Lo Brown, I seem to remember something about a chest plate and getting a lot of people pretty pissed off.
That was a legit injury.
Yeah. And if you've met Andy Anderson.
Now, look, right here, it hurts.
Yeah.
Right now.
I was kind of hoping you were going to wear it.
Right in the heart.
Oh, I was kidding. You don't have to get it. And if you've ever met Andy Anderson, you know what a true villain is. So let's get going with today's show. First of all, guys, villains. Wrestling is built on good guy versus bad guy. And that's kind of how it's been had been for many, many years. It started off back in the 40s and 50s on television especially, where there was the shining, today we would call them bland, but at the time they were the heroes. Guys like Vern Gagne would come out, and he'd be the shining example of the everyman. Now let's talk about that first of all, because the everyman needed a villain. And Chief, I'm going to ask you first of all, dig back in the old vaults there. What were the most effective villains in the old days?
Well,
Give me some
I think
examples.
back in the day it was more black and white. You know, the lines are a little blurred now, but I still think it can be black and white. Too many people try to be a cool villain now, and I think that's, you know, part of the problem. But we had some great villains. Like I know one of my favorites back in like the late 70s, early 80s, and kind of the Bob Backlund era of WWE was Don Morocco. If you go watch the late 70s, early 80s, Morocco was just excellent, and you know nobody cheered him. You know, another one, of course, was Tully Blanchard. Even with the Four Horsemen, when they started being the cool heels, people would still cheer them. You know, someone would cheer Arn, Rick, you know, and Barry Windham, but they never cheered Tully.
No one
Tully
cheered
was a heel's heel. Nope.
Everyone hated
him.
Tully.
Most people in the locker room did too, but that's another story.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, that's next week's episode.
But because I guess he lived the gimmick. But you know what I mean? There was some. But you know, when you were a heel, you were a heel. I think a lot of times in this era, people want to be the cool heel. They want to sell merchandise. So I think sometimes the lines are blurred now. But you can still. You know, I go places where I'm a heel, and you can still make people hate you. It's really not that hard. You can still do the old school things, and they work. But too many people. A lot of the guys, I think these days, they'll walk to the ring and maybe argue with the crowd, but then when they get in the ring, they just wrestle. They kind of forget being a heel in there, you know. But I was always like, you know, Ox Baker always taught me. He did a lot of my early training, you know, and he's like, if you're a heel and you can reverse the hold, you don't reverse the hold, you rake the eyes. You know, you never out wrestle the face. And, you know, and just, if you can do something dastardly to get out of a hold, you do that instead of doing something scientific. I mean, it was basic black and white, you know, heel face.
Okay. Now, D'Lo, when you started off and you were directed to be a heel, what kind of things were you taught? What was the philosophy for you to be the heel when you started?
You were taught to, for lack of a better term, be a dick. You wanted to make people mad at you. You wanted people to literally jump out of the crowd and punch you in the face. So, you know, and I'll agree with Chief. Like, it's funny he says Ox Baker. That was one of my first versions of a heel that I remember watching. You know, watching his heart punch. I quivered when I saw him fold the arm over, and I knew he was going to wind up for the heart punch. Like, that was the heel. Like, I wanted him to lose. I tuned in every week to watch this man get beat, and when he didn't, it brought me back next week. So to me, the heel is the driving force, because without a heel, there's no babyface. Without a foil, there's no hero. And to me, a heel has to be that guy who does. He could be a great wrestler. He could be technically sound, but he takes every shortcut. He does everything the easy way. Where the babyface on the other side works hard, says his prayers, does, you know, eats his vitamins, works in the gym. He does all the grunt work, goes out and runs 30 miles a day. And the heel, he does nothing. He lays in bed, and then he shows up to the ring and he cheats. The guy who pisses you off, that's what a heel's supposed to be. He's supposed to be the guy who makes you mad.
Okay.
And to me, that's a heel. And if you have that, which, and I will agree with Chief again, I think that's what's missing in today's business, is we have people who want to play as shades of gray, where from day one, the most popular selling book on the planet is the Bible. You know why? It is good versus evil. From day one, it is good versus evil. And wrestling is literally good versus evil in its different forms. And as long as you have that evil here, and the stronger that evil is, it just makes your baby face even bigger. That's how, I mean, I love being a heel. There are no rules to being a heel. It is go out there and make people mad at you. make people upset, make people want to come back and see you lose, and you piss them off when you don't. That's being a heel. And I don't think people embrace that anymore. You know, guys like, you know, Freddie Blassie and Tully Blanchard, or, Don Morocco. And I'm stealing on here. Or you get guys like, just who want to be hated. And I'll give you another example. The Four Horsemen, just like Chief said, the Horsemen were getting that cool kind of vibe, and Tully would get in the ring and get booed. And he loved it because he was the true heel of the group. Okay. I've always wanted to be that guy with the black hat in wrestling. I wanted to be the guy who makes my baby face look good. I wanted to be so bad that Hitler could walk through the curtain and you would cheer.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
That's what I want to be as a heel. Like,
okay.
That's the mentality you have to have being a heel and trying to draw money in wrestling.
Okay. If you make them hate you bad enough, it doesn't matter who walks through that curtain. It
does not matter who walks through the curtain. As a heel, when I walked to the ring, I didn't care who I was wrestling. They were going to pop for him because they hated me so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's the mentality you have to have. Literally, you could have Hitler walk to the ring and they would go, "Holy shit!" They would be happy.
Get him, Hitler.
Wanting me to get beat.
Yeah. Okay. Now, here's an interesting thing that you guys, just listening to you guys, what you're painting this picture in my head, and it's a picture when I dig deeper, and it seems like there is no easy path here, because on one hand, and correct me if I'm wrong, one hand, the good guy, the face, he has to work hard, he has to wrestle, he has to do all the fancy things and look on the side of good. Mm-hmm. And while the heel can get away with doing a lot less things, he's doing a lot more in a different way. He's not maybe doing more physical stuff, but he's doing a lot more mental stuff that he's portraying to the crowd.
Yeah, psychology. Yeah.
The psychology, yeah. So my question then is, what is harder? Like, in your guys' career, you guys, all three of you, have been heels and villains. Heels and faces. What's easier? What do you find is harder to do? And I'll start off with Andy first. Andy, what do you find is the easier thing, and what do you prefer to do? And don't tell me you're old and you don't want to run around anymore. I mean, back in the prime, we're talking prime Andy here. Okay?
Even it's funny, even prime, but like going back to what D'Lo said and what Chief said, I echo all of that. As far as what a heel is, what makes a good heel. My thing was always, the Dragon Slayer and the Dragon. So the bigger and badder the Dragon was, then, that gave the opportunity for the Dragon Slayer to shine. As wanting to be the ideal worker, good worker, consummate professional, I'd say, well, it shouldn't matter because, babyface, heel, whatever is needed is what you do. And I'm kind of curious. I mean, I'll answer this in my way, but I'm kind of curious to hear D'Lo and Chief. For me, I've always found being a heel to be easier. People say I'm a nice guy outside of the ring and all that, but to me, to kind of turn it to a different level, to as D'Lo alluded to, it's like when you want to be a dick, and it's like being a nice person in everyday life. You come across all the assholes, you come across all the dicks, and it's like, you pick out for me, it's always like you pick out things there that what makes that person so annoying. And it's like, these are the types of things, these are the pieces of the puzzle that I would, make as part of the Andy Anderson kind of heel persona, heel character. So I don't know, there's just a natural, for me, it's just always been more natural to be a heel. Mm-hmm. You could be a face, you work it properly, but and D'Lo said too, it's a lot more fun. To me, it's infinitely more fun to be a heel than a baby face. And to add on to how he was saying about how good it was for that reception, for people to show up because they want to see you get beat, and you don't get beat, and they get more pissed off and they come back. To me, one of the greatest feelings and one of the most fulfilling feelings as a heel
Mhm.
is at the end of the match when you're laying there and you're getting that 1, 2, 3 where you're actually finally getting pinned, and the crowd erupts because finally, the dragon has been slayed.
Mm-hmm.
You know you've done your part.
Okay.
And that is just an amazing feeling. And I think only like true heels could actually understand that.
Yeah, you and I talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to come back to that in a minute for you, Chief. I had a question about that. D'Lo, your biggest success at the time in the WWE, you were part of like a group of heels, but you guys were kind of cool heels. And this was kind of like where the evolution now of heels were starting to go from people just didn't like in the old days when we were talking about villains. And I look back to like the most famous villains that in my youth that I just riled me or just got me angry. I mean, I had the Stomper, Archie Goldie. He was a dick, okay, and he was a bully,
Right.
And then you had Bad News Allen, or I guess Bad News Brown.
What a great heel! What a great heel! What a great heel!
The stuff he you knew if you ran into him somewhere, he'd still dress you down and make you feel like crap. It was just the way he did things as his character.
We can go to his grave right now, pull his bones out, and he still kick my ass.
Yeah, that does sound.
That does sound.
So now I know, like when I read a few things, I just had, and this had nothing to actually do with the show. I was just reading all kinds of history stuff, and I was reading about villains and things. And your name popped up pre-WWE, before you popped up, and how you were working. I think it was Smoky Mountain, maybe, and they were directing you to be a heel. And you had New Jack and these guys doing some outrageously crazy stuff, and then you come up, and they put you in this kind of faction where everyone's kind of cool. Like, let's face it, Nation of Domination, there were some cool people that were acting in there, even though they were the villains. What did you think of that kind of, was it hard to portray that? I mean, they have you, the character is inherently cool, but you're still a dick, and you're still supposed to make people hate you. But we're getting into that point where people are starting to like the dicks in wrestling.
Like the heels.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to like dicks in wrestling.
Wrong show. Andy will be hosting that show next. No.
That's the custom show, special guest.
Raven. Oh, sorry.
Growing up as I did with Smoky Mountain and being part of the Gangsters, and we were this, for those who don't know backstory, we were 3 black guys in the South calling out white people for their atrocities.
Yeah.
And shining the light, realistically, turning the light and shining it back on them. We were heels because we showed the world how ignorant they were. And then we just magnified it.
Yeah.
Then we were really true heels, like the Klan rallied against us. But then coming to the WWE, where it's more, and was skewing towards more entertainment based. We were heels, but we were also entertainers. So it wasn't about inciting someone to try to shoot you. It was just making someone pissed off. And then the same person would be at the lobby of the hotel going, D'Lo, can I have your autograph? You're so great. It was a little weird because I had come from True Heat and Smoky Mountain Wrestling, where it was, I literally was trying to make someone, kill me. And, the way we talked, the way we did things. As a heel, we wanted to make people get out there and just riot. Whereas in WWE, it was more like, make them mad, but don't make them cross over the line and be angry, because they still got to buy. They still got to. It's still a corporate giant. So it was a little weird to be part of that, but you just try to embrace what you're in and be the best heel you can be, and just roll with the punches.
Okay.
But for me, deep down inside, and then I'll go back to Andy. What he was just saying is, it's easier to be a heel, and I'll give you an example. Is it easier to make someone like you or hate you?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine going to a bar, and there's a girl sitting there. I can piss her off in 4 words. it might take 4 years for me to make her like me.
Mhm.
Nicely
Good
done.
point. Good point.
You know what I'm saying? So
I think
what
that's.
is, what is go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, I was just going to say, just to throw into that, just to kind of add further to what you're saying, in hopes that you'll you can kind of work off this. As time has gone on, and things get blurred, it's become increasingly difficult to make people like you. Like back, we're talking like 70s, 80s, and things were pretty, black and white.
Pretty
You
cut and
liked it.
dry.
Yeah. Whereas nowadays, right, like to try and be a baby face, gee whiz.
Look, well, and it started an attitude where baby faces started to be revolted upon because you're white meat baby face, let's go, and the crowd turned on it because it was too much, Opie Taylor. It was too much, too goody two shoes.
Yeah.
You can't be that way. Whereas before, we had talked about earlier in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the everyday man was the guy who, did all the right things and didn't sleep with a girl until he was married and whatever.
A man of virtue.
Yes. Whereas come Attitude Era, that guy and the line between babyface and heel started getting blurred and actually flipped, where the heel became the baby and the baby became the heel. And that was a microcosm of society because it was starting to change. You could actually look at TV shows from 97, 98, 99, and look, one of the biggest shows of the early 2000s was, vampires and wolves were baby faces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Always heels before. Twilight was everything because the line blurred in society.
Yeah, even music. If you listen to music. Yeah.
I mean, it was. We went from F the Police, which is a bad thing, to gangster rap was a good thing in like a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So lines got blurred, and wrestling, no matter what happens in the world, is a reflection of society. And wrestling will always be a microcosm of what is happening in the real world. So when the world goes alert, and it started in 98, 99, when good is bad and bad is good, what did wrestling do? Wrestling gave us Stone Cold, the guy who flipped his boss off.
Mm-hmm.
Wrestling gave us Attitude, which the world was flipped upside down, and good was bad and bad is good, to south and south is west. But that's what wrestling is. And wrestling promotes the heels.
Mm-hmm.
Heels draw.
Okay. Well, you know what? As we talked here about like the evolution, like we have in the beginning of wrestling the clear-cut heel. There's no.
Yeah.
You look at these guys in the thing. None of them were tweeners. They weren't in between stuff. They weren't. Sometimes they were good. Sometimes they were bad. They were always bad. And then we look at the Attitude Era, and we see a lot of people who are starting to slip in between that. But I guess as we're talking, there's one part that I don't think we should discount, and that's that strange little area where the WWF took all their bad guys and made them cartoon bad guys. And a great example of this is you guys brought up Don Morocco, who I've seen a ton of matches with. And I remember Don Morocco as a horrible, mean-spirited bully of a man who you hated. But at the same time, I also remember in '84 watching a cartoon called Don Morocco Takes a Bath, where it was all the Hulk Hogan show where all the bad guys were animated, and sure, they were bad, but they were lovable bad guys. And there is a weird evolution of the heel there, where all of a sudden they're still doing bad stuff, but the WWF is telling us that they're not really bad guys. They're characters. And that's no much more so in the kind of 80s era, where all of these bad guys all have cartoons and things and stuff like that. Now, do you think that if we hadn't had that, we came across that era and we didn't cartoonize the villain for a while, do you think we would still evolve to the way things went now? I'm curious about that. Chief, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, just like anything over the history of time, one little event can alter things and go a completely different direction. So, yeah, things might have changed, but in a different direction than now. It just, but yeah, that probably did have an effect somewhat on, and of course, shortly after that is kind of when WWF opened up and kind of broke kayfabe. I mean, people always kind of knew in the background, but it was never spoken, so all that changed things, like I said, I think you can still get legitimate heat today. It's a little bit harder, but you can do it. Like I've had younger guys on shows ask me like they're heels, but they don't get nearly the heat I do. And they ask me how I do it. But I point out little things to them, like at intermission, when I'm a heel, I'm not going to be out there signing nobody's autograph. Kid asks me for an autograph when I'm a heel. I'm going to walk away from them. But these guys, I'll see they're out there, the bad guy, but then in intermission, they're out there signing autographs, shaking hands.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they know you're not a bad guy,
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like Andy said earlier, like he's a nice guy outside of the ring, and most people think that I am too. But but you kind of, and D'Lo can probably point this out. It's not 100% true, but most of the time, the guys that are the heels are actually the nicer guys outside the ring than the guys that are the baby faces.
And I've said it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen that for 35 years. I mean, that's just that 90% of the time that stands to be true. Yeah. But I think your original question about whether it's easier to be heel or face, I think it's kind of personal preference. I know some guys that are predominantly faces and they've had to be heel every once in a while. And they think it's harder to be a heel, but they like getting the cheers. Personally, I don't. Like I can be the face and I can get cheers, but I don't get the same adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
When people are booing me and I'm getting people angry, I get the adrenaline rush. I get off more on that than the cheers. The cheers, I'll just go through the motions. I can get them, but it doesn't really give me that same high that, that getting booed does. But then for me, when they, some places have me work as face, it's a little harder because I'm 350 pounds. And most of the time, on this indie scene now, guys are smaller. Mm-hmm. I'm working guys that are much smaller than me. Well, how am I the underdog? If I'm 350 and I'm wrestling a 200-pound guy, I'm not the underdog.
Yeah.
And when you're a face, you really kind of need to be the underdog, so people can get behind you. People like an underdog,
It's funny we're talking about like the people that are like kind of perennial faces, and we've all either talked to him, know him, whatever. But I mean, Glamour Boy Shane is the penultimate baby. Yeah, see, but the penultimate baby face. Yeah, they tried to turn him heel, and it didn't last very long, and that's just not Shane. Shane's just the baby face, and.
Yeah, but we just had him on. He was the nicest guy in the world. He's
going an exception to the rule.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you asked him this question, he would probably say it's harder to be a heel.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder. Sorry, go ahead.
It is for certain people. It is definitely difficult to be one thing or the other. I'm to know me, I'm a video game guy, nerd who is an accountant. But if you get me in a wrestling ring, you tell me to be a heel, that character comes from the guy I always wanted to be. Not who I am, the guy I always wanted to be. So I was able to find that, but like some people can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's hard. I find it easier to be a heel. I find it easier, in my opinion.
Now, here's the interesting thing, okay, and this is going really deep, weird psychology now, is the three of you play effective heels. You guys are generally pretty nice guys, right? I always wonder, like, when I think in my head and I hear that, and especially when you guys tell me how much it feels great to be the heel that gets, finally gets conquested over. He's, you're helping throw over the good guy. And in my head, I'm always thinking like, man, I have a hard time when people think I'm a dick doing something normal. How can you guys, I don't know if I could do that. Like if I could take people, I go back to when I read this old Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and who knows if it's fake or not, but in my head, I'm going to say maybe it was real. And it was talking about Tommy Rich and how Tommy Rich had just tried to be a bad guy for just a couple weeks in Memphis. And he said, when a 5-year-old kid comes up to you and cries and looks in your face, I just can't do it anymore. And I was just like, what I got to commend you guys for being, I guess, mentally strong to be able to take the vilification. Have you guys ever had to deal where it was like real vilification? Because I mean, it seems in these days, wrestling fans are trained to, oh, he's the bad guy, boo, you know? But have you guys ever felt really like these people effing hate me?
Absolutely.
I mean, probably D'Lo didn't say it in Smoky Mountain, but can you each give me a little story of feeling like that?
Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah,
here,
go ahead.
Please,
Go ahead.
please.
You know, it's easy to realize you're the villain when you're in Puerto Rico.
Exactly.
And I don't know, you walk to the ring and there's rocks flying from the arena floor, you know, and it's flying from the stands because they hate you. Or there's some kid who's selling cups of rocks outside the front of the arena for 10 cents a piece. Or when you see a kid who's got a pair of vice grips, a lighter, and a penny, and he's heating the penny up in hopes that he can touch your arm with the hot penny. Yeah, when those are the times when you go, yeah, I'm the heel. I'm the guy they want to hurt. And you know, when I'll go back to Puerto Rico because that's probably the large example of it. When the office tells, okay, you're a bad guy on TV. When you go out into the town, because people are going to try to cut you.
Yikes.
Or when you're wrestling Carlos, and in the middle of the match he goes, you know, we can't go near the stands. Why? That woman's got a knife.
Oh my.
Yes, that makes you a heel.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was the early examples of being a heel. I didn't get to the Klan rallying against us.
This is what I want. I want to hear something from Smoky Mountain. I want to hear a Smoky Mountain example.
Yeah.
Look, there is the one story where I forget the town, but we're wrestling the Rock and Roll Express, and we drive into the town, and there's the Klan there. You know how every little town's got welcome to Manchester or whatever, and it's just this big statue, you know, big stone
Banners,
thing,
yeah.
and it's got the founding date and the mayor and all that gaga. Well, as you drive into town, there's some Klan guys with a sign saying "Gangsters go home." So now we go to this gym, high school gym that's full of 2,000 people. Wrestling the Rock and Roll Express. We're going to beat the Rock and Roll Express. We're in the main event. Well, Jim Cornette puts us on at the intermission and literally says, back your car up to the door. Put all your stuff in the car. 1, 2, 3, fight out the door, get in your car, and don't stop till you get back to Knoxville. Okay? Because you don't, and from what I understood, the people were waiting around the back door for us to walk out at the end of the show. That's heat.
That's awesome.
We're gonna kill you, heat.
Hey, D'Lo, when you walked in that gym of 2,000 people, were there more white sheets in there than there is in a Bed Bath & Beyond?
Yeah, Bed Bath & Beyond. It didn't have Jack on it.
You know what? I love it though because you're talking about this stuff. You're talking about the Klan, and earlier you're giving us description about how much how hated you want to be as a heel. For Hitler to come out as a baby face and you still be the hated ones, I think that could have happened there.
Yeah.
Exactly. It could happen there. You know what the coolest feeling was in the world? And Andy, I'll go back to about 20 minutes ago when you're talking about laying down the 1, 2, 3. And people go, ah. When you get the 1, 2, 3 the other way, and the arena goes stunned
Silent.
silent.
Ah, yes.
Oh.
They stunned silence.
And that's when
And
it's
you said that
dangerous.
Yeah.
That's when it's dangerous.
You
Yeah.
cut that tension with a
But-
knife. Yeah.
As a heel, you're like, oh yes, this is what.
You
Now
own them.
you know you're going to pay it forward. It may not
Yes.
be today or tomorrow, but you're going to pay it forward. But the fact that I have this,
Yep.
the fact that it was given to me from these people, and now it's going to manifest throughout the territory of what this night was. Oh, and then that's only seconded by the 1, 2, 3 when you get beat.
Yeah.
And you hear that eruption, and I'm gonna take away the fourth wall here, ladies and gentlemen. A cheer and a boo are the same thing.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen.
The bigger the cheer, I know I helped. The bigger
Yes.
the boo, I know I helped.
Yes.
So it's the same thing to me. Worst thing a wrestler could have is no sound while we're working.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The worst thing a wrestler could have is indifference when
Yes.
we're in the ring.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I have cheering and booing, I don't care. I am in love. I am in love. I'm in love.
Yep. Because that means
Your
they're
happy
emotionally
place.
invested, and that's
Yes.
what we
Yes,
want.
sir,
Drama.
Chief. Yes,
emotion.
sir, Chief. I
Yeah.
need emotion.
Yeah.
And now, Tom, I got a question for you because we've
Yeah.
been. Sorry, I'm gonna hijack the show for a second.
Go right ahead. Oh, wait a sec. We got a run in.
Oh,
Oh.
Rick
Hang on.
Serrano the third,
man.
our co-host over
You
from
couldn't have
WPO
picked
Wrestling.
a worse time to cut in to a show. We're talking about heels and we're talking about heat.
Yeah.
So the person that has the most heat in this show at this very moment
Wait
is
a
Rick
minute.
Serrano the third because you just cut off D'Lo Brown.
All right. First things first. I'm so sorry, D'Lo. Second thing is, my name is Rick, but you might as well call me Mark because I'm looking at the real deal now. Woo! Bro, let me tell you something, bro. You are the greatest European champion of all time. I don't care what anybody says. Secondly, I think I'm up to thirdly. Thirdly, I wore a catcher's chest pad when I would wrestle with my cousins, and I would frog splash them. That's what I would do. That was my thing to you, man. Wearing a catcher's gear on my chest, I walk around doing that stuff, bro.
going too.
You the man, son. You the man.
Look, I appreciate it. Now I'm gonna turn heel on you. How dare
Uh-oh.
you walk into my conversation as I'm trying to lay down some knowledge, and you walk in here half-ass hour late trying to drop something. Sit back.
I'm sorry,
listen.
D'Lo. But maybe my fourth thing, your frogs,
Oh, cut me off again.
your frog splash, second to none. I'm sorry, R.I.P. to Eddie, but your frog splash, finger licking good. A1 steak sauce on that.
Hey, I'll be.
You know what?
I'll be back in a minute, guys. I gotta go get my crowbar so I can pry his lips off D'Lo's belt.
Because I need it. I will tell you in all seriousness. Before I go back to my other point,
Yeah.
because Tom, I got a question for you.
Yes.
I appreciate the things you said, and I will say this about the frog splash because it's important. People tell me I have the best frog splash. I don't care. I'm in a long line of lineage of guys, and if I'm in the top 1, 2, or 3 of guys who did the frog splash in history of wrestling, I'm sitting freaking pretty.
Mhm.
So I don't care if I'm the first. I don't care if it's Eddie's or Rob's or. I pay homage to Art Barr, who started the whole damn thing.
Mhm.
That's
Excellent.
why I did it. That's why I started it. And look, if I've got a cool little place in wrestling where someone said I did a move better than someone else, and there's an argument, I won. As Jim Cornette would say, I won the damn pony.
Nice.
Because I won. So I'm good with that.
Excellent. Well, then you know what, Rick? We're talking about here is the psychology of being a villain, and D'Lo was just about to tell us a bit more about that. I guess we can look at it as, and I don't want to sound insulting because it's not. And you can look at it this way. Some people, old school guys, may say what I'm going to say here is slightly insulting, but the fact is, wrestlers in a way are kind of like artists. Okay, it is a performance art that is directed to work your emotions. And if you can really get people to invest in love or hate, you have, as an artist, have hit your pinnacle. And D'Lo was just about to tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I was just going to ask you a question, Tom.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, and I'll put it to the whole panel, everyone here, before I give my answer, my perspective. What is your determination between difference between a babyface and a heel?
Oh, it's been such a confusing because, you know, I've been watching wrestling for 40 years and seen things change so much from when I was a little boy to now that the villain has changed a lot. It's hard to keep track of who the villain is. And this day and age, there are very few guys who elicit a real hateful response because they let me forget that they are wrestlers, that they're performers. They let me immerse themselves in hating them for what they're doing. And here's a weird example. Originally, the man that I had booked for the show 2 weeks ago was already set to come on and had a terrible tragedy happen to him. Okay. And the reason I asked him specifically for the show, because he was the one guy that when we used to turn on ROH and watch him, my wife, who barely watches wrestling, was invested in hating him so much with the way he acted. And we hated him so much that I had a second car. And we named that car Jimmy Rave because we hated it so much. We hated that car. And, you know, so Jimmy, he was one of the few guys in the last, you know, while that managed to elicit real hate out of me. And that's what a villain is. But I see it a lot. There is not a lot of villains left. Guys are too cool. In the indie thing, it's right. You meet the guys and they're super nice, but they come out. And you know, in the old days, I mean, Chief talked about it. Andy, you talked about this before. In the old days, the good guys sold merchandise and the bad guys, the good guys gave them a cut because they knew they couldn't go out and sell their stuff because bad guys don't do that. But every show you go to today, every single good guy, bad guy, in-betweener has a T-shirt for sale. They're all going to be out there at intermission, flogging them, kissing babies, and doing whatever. So it detracts from what a villain is, right? So to answer, for me at the end, the ultimate villain will always be, for me, the guys like Bad News Allen and Jimmy Rave. Either you're such a chicken shit heel that does crappy stuff like Jimmy Rave that you can never get your hands on him and you want to throw toilet paper and beat him with a plunger, or he's like Bad News Allen where he is so freaking scary, you know, he'll beat the crap out of you, your girlfriend, and your mom and laugh at the whole time doing it, and you know he can do it, and you know he probably will do it. Those are the villains that I see.
Okay. I'll throw around to the rest of the guys in the panel real quick before I give my answer.
Keith, do you want to go?
Yeah, that's one thing that Thomas just mentioned is the chicken shit heel, and that's something that a lot of people don't want to play anymore. I think that's something that we're missing. They want to be the cool heel. Nobody wants to be the chicken shit heel. And the few guys that do that get a lot of heat for it still because nobody's doing it much anymore. You know, everybody wants to be cool. I don't, to address something else he said is, when I'm a heel, I don't even take merchandise with me. I take merchandise and I sell a lot as a face, but when I'm a heel, I don't have a merch table. You know, I'm not going to be out there trying to sell stuff because you got to be nice to people and I want legit heat. So there's still a few of us that still do that. But yeah, most of it these days, especially on the indie scene, it's about selling your t-shirts and everything else. And so that gets dropped by the wayside. But yeah, being a heel, another thing that Thomas said earlier too, is he was talking about us, you know, three of us playing heels. When I go through the curtain, when I'm a heel, I don't play a heel. I actually believe it when I walk through the curtain.
Yes.
Like for that 20 minutes I'm out there, when I walk through that curtain, I believe everything I'm saying. And I think that's the only way the crowd's going to believe you too. Like you can tell the guys that are playing a character and the guys that believe what they're saying. And if you don't believe what you're saying, the crowd's not going to believe it. I think eliciting emotion, which I've talked about before on here. Good wrestling is drama, and eliciting emotion is the most important thing. Your character, the things you do. All of us do a lot of the same moves. The moves don't matter. You can get all oohs and ahs with some big moves, but like I said, a year from now, 2 years from now, people aren't going to remember what you did. They're going to remember the way you made them feel. So I think,
well said. Ricky,
I think that's much more important than any move anybody does.
Yes.
The character, eliciting the emotion from the crowd, telling the story. I can do fish hooks and eye rakes and get more emotion than I'm going to get if I do, a splash off the top rope. I might get an ooh and ah for that, but if I make them upset, make them feel emotion, they're going to remember that. I remember stuff the way when I was a kid, when I went to wrestling, I still remember the way different wrestlers made me feel, to this day. And I kind of miss that because once you get into the business and a lot of things, how everything's done, you kind of do any of you guys ever get that kind of miss when you were a kid and where you suspended the disbelief and you were actually into it? Like I remember those days. It was a long time ago for me.
You're behind the curtain now. You've seen all the magician's tricks, so we know everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still remember, I forget a lot of moves that I might have seen and what happened in a match, 30, 40, longer than that because I've been wrestling 45 years ago. But I remember how different wrestlers made me feel. When I was little, I used to hate Colonel Buck Robley. Met him later on in life, but he elicited emotion in me. He made me, he just made me hate him. I wanted to see him get beat all the time because he was a despicable character, and I couldn't even tell you half the stuff he did in the ring now, but I still remember how he made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's much more I could add to what Tom said, what Chief said, kind of the combination of the two for me. To me, you look at the black and the white, the good and the evil, and it's to me, it's the evil. It's all the bad. It's, as D'Lo said earlier, it's when you could counter wrestle, but instead you take a shortcut. It's all about the shortcuts, the cheap shots. It's all about the ugliness, everything just bad, wrong, and depending where you are, because where you are in Alberta might be different than where you are in Iowa or where you are in Puerto Rico, or there's going to be some underlying, bad is bad, but there's going to be certain things that might be worse in some spots. But at the end of the day, it's like Chief said, though, it's not what you do, it's what you make people feel. And from my own personal experience over the past 6-7 years, and Tom, you've seen enough, like everything you've gone through about being a cool heel. For me, I've tried to avoid all that. I've gone out of my way. I've had several conversations with people about merch. As a heel, no merch. Have I lost money?
Yep.
Absolutely. But I think about the longevity of Andy Anderson as a heel and how the heat that I've kept over the years, and that's probably been more beneficial for me because I've had a longer run in that respect. You are
That's
blessed.
We think long term and not just the moment, Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And and Tom, I know you've been to shows. For me, a great indicator for me, two indicators. One is they could be talking, the announcer could be talking about something at a show. They could just say the name Andy Anderson, and the crowd starts chanting, "Andy sucks."
Yep.
I'm not even out there. It's just, something, Andy Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that. The other great thing for me, which is one of the greatest compliments, and I've received this from more than one person, is, again, going back to, Chief saying it's not what you do, it's how you make them feel. People have come, they've come to me after matches like, man, it's like, everybody hates you so much. And it's like, well, thank you. It's like, but you don't do anything. I know. And that's,
Well, thank you.
yeah, that's the whole part of it is, I say, like, for me, like a high spot's kicking the bottom rope and going, who sucks next? So, that's some of the, like the less is more. And if you're going to commit to being a heel, then man, you got to go both feet in the water, 10,000%. After the show, same thing, like if there's still fans hanging around and, we're starting to tear stuff down, I'll either wait, or if, I will go, if there's a congregation of people over here, I'll go over to the far side, start grabbing chairs because I have zero desire to talk to anybody.
I had a promoter a couple years ago. My tag team partner and I made this little girl cry in the front row. And afterwards, we're in the back, and the promoter came to the back, and the little girl was out there with her parents, and he's like, "Well, I want you to go out and talk to this little girl, so she knows that you guys aren't mean. Her parents want you to come out and talk to her, so she calms down." And I said, "Absolutely not."
Ooh.
And he goes, "Well, that's what I want you to do." And it got kind of heated, and I said, well, "We're not going to do it. We're heels." And he almost kind of threatened whether we worked there again. I said, "Well, then we might not work here again. I'm fine with that, but I'm not going to go out there and apologize, because that will ruin any heat we will ever have here again, and we will not draw for you anymore. Period." And he said, "Well, I'm worried they won't come back next month." I said, "They will come back next month because they want to see us get our ass kicked."
Yeah, exactly.
And the next month we were back. Everything got worked out. We never went out there and apologized, and they were back in the front row again, or our parents, because they want to see us get our ass kicked. But he was so worried about losing this little girl and her two parents. I'm like, they will be back. But some of the promoters don't even understand this anymore, and that's a whole nother issue. That's another part of the problem.
I think the best heel work is showing up late and interrupting D'Lo. I think that's the best way.
Actually, I felt nothing, Rick. I forgot you were even here.
Oh, okay. Well, Rick, why don't you tackle this question about villains?
Yeah,
what makes a villain for you, man?
As a chicken shit heel manager myself, my job is just to get people annoyed and to hate me and to just despise me and want to see me get my ass kicked. And when I go out there, my goal is to yell at kids, yell at adults, make them jealous that I got money and they don't. And I honestly, I think times have changed. Yes, that the good guy and the bad guy lines are getting blurred. But what I'm seeing, though, is I just think we're just getting older. When you get older and you're as an adult, you see Santa Claus differently than a child would. I still think the heel thing is there, but it's just that we're older now. And we see, well, you know what? Bray Wyatt's fucking cool. But a kid is still scared of Bray Wyatt, and Bray Wyatt is still scary to children. So I just think it's just, as you get older, things change and the lines start to blur as, oh, yeah, it's cool to like the bad guy. So that's my take on it. I honestly just think it's the age and everything just changes. That's what's changed for me, for sure. That's what I see it as.
Okay. Now, you know what? You guys brought up
hang on, because D'Lo was the one that threw out the question, and he was going to let
D'Lo didn't answer.
Yes.
My goodness.
So finally for me, and I agree with everything that's been said so far, being a good heel comes down to 3 words for me: perspective and conviction. Perspective.
Yeah.
A heel in his mind believes he's doing the right thing.
That he's the hero, yeah.
I'll give you an example. He's the hero. Darth Vader thinks he's saving the universe. Thanos thinks he is doing the right thing by killing off half of everybody. So in his mind, he believes he's doing the right thing from his perspective. Now, you have to have the conviction to follow that out.
Yeah.
So you go through, I want to be cheered. I want to be the good guy. No. If I'm going to kill off half the universe, I'm going to follow that out through the end.
Yeah.
And to me, the difference between Stone Cold Steve Austin babyface, Stone Cold Steve Austin heel is, as a babyface, he did this to the crowd. As a heel, he did this. Think about that. Like, it is very simple. It is perspective, and it is conviction in what you believe in. And if you follow those through, if I believe, no matter how much I cheat, lie, or steal, love you, Eddie, no matter how much I lie, cheat, or steal, if I think I'm doing what's right for me, that makes me a good heel.
Okay.
That makes me a great heel.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Very much.
And if I'm willing to follow through with it and be the guy that is booed when I'm seen out at the store,
Yeah.
if I'm willing to be the guy who's booed when if I'm driving down the street in my car, someone goes, "Hey, roll the window down. You suck." I've had that happen to me. If you're willing to do that, that's what makes a great heel.
Mhm.
That is the core of what a great heel is. Perspective and conviction to me.
Okay.
And that's been taught to me from the greats. Hell, I've had Ron Simmons to Jim Cornette to God rest his soul, Pat Patterson tell me this exact same thing in different words.
Okay.
Believe you want to be the worst thing going, but believe from your perspective you're doing what you think is right for you.
That
Even
always
though
makes
I'm going to screw this old woman over, it's right for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what other people are going to see, that you're screwing this old woman over because it's going to benefit you. That's a heel.
Okay. Now, earlier we talked about, you talked about that feeling of sometimes of when the bad guy gets the pin and the crowd goes silent. And the thing, I'm going to give an example of that happening that I've seen. And I want each of you to think of an example. It could be something you've been part of or something that you saw where it just changed everything by the bad guy winning. Okay. Now, the example I'm going to use comes from about 1983 or 84. It involved the Stomper in Calgary, Alberta. In the middle of a tag team, he was teamed with Bad News Allen. Well, you knew that was going to happen eventually. And his son as they took on the Hearts. During the match, they kept playing Bad News Allen was getting more and more frustrated with the Stomper. And in the end of the match, he turns around and pile drives the Stomper's son into the cement floor. And the whole place went silent for a few seconds. And then a real riot broke out. So much so the police were involved, people phoning the hospital constantly across the things, people fighting and trying to kill Bad News Allen, who, of course, you know, was more terrifying than ever. But there was an example of when the villain did a triumph, and man, everyone in the room forgot they were at wrestling. It became too real, too much, too quick. And that's part of one of the best parts of it's going to always be a story in wrestling history that people who saw it will be like, or even were a part of it, were like, wow, they'll never forget that. So I want to know some kind of event or something that either is your own personal thing or something that you saw that affected you that way, where it was just like, and I'm going to start off with, I'll start off with Chief, okay? Chief, you must have something like that.
Yeah, I'll give you a personal one, and then I'll give you one real quick that everybody can look up and will probably know about. But the night that Ivan Koloff beat Bruno Sammartino after his 8.5-year title run, and the crowd went silent. That's a very famous one. You can look up that match on YouTube. Now, one personally that I was involved with, there's been quite a few, but one that was kind of scary was in Puerto Rico the night I beat Chicky Star for the IGWA title. The place went silent because I don't think they were expecting it to happen, and they were very upset, but the crowd went silent when I pinned him. And then I draped his body in the American flag, and then it got loud and people started throwing stuff. It took them 10 minutes to get 10 minutes to get me out of the ring.
You just fucked up.
Yeah. But yeah, that was an eerie, scary silence. I can tell you that much.
Wow. D'Lo, you want to take a crack at this one?
I was at a Starrcade match in Philadelphia. It was Nikita Koloff versus Magnum TA, best of 7 series for the United States heavyweight title, and it was 3-3. And in Veterans Stadium, Nikita used the Russian chain to beat Magnum to win the U.S. title. And Veterans Stadium, which Philadelphia Eagles play, went silent.
Oof.
And there's Nikita, this Russian, holding the U.S. title up over his head. And this is still when stereotypes could play. They're like, one, because you'd always thought the babyface was win. And here is, there was probably 10,000 people in the building, and it was stunned silence.
And Magnum was at the height of his popularity then too.
He was the baby face.
Yeah.
He was going to be world champion. So this was his last step before becoming world champion. Subsequently, he had a car wreck. Anyway, hold up a thing. Anyway, this was a fan, like Magnum TA was the bomb. He was the dude. And when Nikita beat him, place went silent.
Wow. That's a great example. All right. How about you, Rick? You have one of those?
Yeah, the most recent one, I would say Undertaker's streak ending.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but go ahead.
Oh, good one.
That the fact that you can hear Paul Heyman screaming, "What? What?" and it echoes in the building because everybody was stunned to silence. And I know that's a cliche thing we've been saying, but it's true. The whole building was shocked. That guy has a meme.
Yeah.
That kid is internet famous because of that.
Yeah. Who could have imagined that? No one thought that was going to happen. Everybody knew Taker was kicking out. Everybody right away was like, that was a mistake. The ref made a mistake. How's Vince going to fix this one? Vince got to come out, do something. But it didn't happen. And then about 10 seconds goes by. Everybody's looking around, scratching their head. And then they announce the winner. And everybody's just like, oh, shit. Fuck you, Brock.
Yeah, you can feel the air just getting sucked out of the building.
And then it returned very angrily.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, how about you, Andy?
That's what I was gonna use too as a more recent one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else like that these days. But I think, in a sense, the fact that at least on the larger scale, I mean, I'm sure maybe we've had examples in the independent scene where it happens, but at least on the larger scale where you look at WWE, AEW, Impact, or whatever, there has been very few of those moments over the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
And I think that kind of actually shows how the business has changed, how that level of true heat isn't what it once was, because you're not getting that kind of reaction. And I think like Taker's loss is the best example of this century, really. Because, like you said, there's nothing else you can compare where something was so positive, in the sense of Dragon Slayer and Dragon. I mean, it's Undertaker was the Dragon Slayer, and yet he's still almost like bigger than the Dragon, not taking it away from Brock. But at the same time, the big nasty fire breathing Dragon, stomped out the Dragon Slayer. And everyone's just like the expression goes. So I think that's a testament to the lack of true heat, at least on the major level in professional wrestling in the past, I'll say 25, 30 years.
Okay. You know what? Sorry.
I'm sorry to cut you. I'm really interested in what D'Lo, what is there one personally that really that grabs your attention?
Obviously there was the example of being the Rock and Roll Express, but to Puerto Rico, straight off WWE television. So I'd gone down in what we had done some side work, and Andy was there at the time, which was to help out. So they had brought myself and Chaz and Pete Gas down. It teamed me with Glamour Shane.
Yes.
And so Glamour Shane and I had won the IWA Tag Team titles. Awesome. And so fast forward 2 months, it's our time to lose the titles, but I end up screwing Shane out of titles, and Chaz and I run off with the belts.
Yeah.
So there's a thing that happens in Puerto Rico, and you can judge how over you are as a heel. As the babyface is about to hit you, you hear the crowd go, "Wah!"
Yeah.
Wah! so you get a feel of how good you are as a heel. So the stunned silence happened when I screwed Shane out of the titles.
Gotcha.
So 2 weeks later is the first time Shane and I are interacting in front of a crowd. I'll never forget, in Coglis. And I'm going to run in. I'm going to go to attack Shane. He's going to duck me, and he's supposed to punch me a couple times. And I remember running in, and I could hear the rumbling. And as I slid in behind Shane, there's just this lull. And there's probably, and Andy will attest, there's probably 6,000 or 7,000 people at a TV taping in Coglis. The place is quiet. And I swing at Shane and miss. And my back is to Shane. I'm not even looking at him. And Shane is balling his fist up, and I can hear the crowd going, me turn around. And as soon as he punches me, wow! And I was like, yes! Because it meant they cared.
Yeah.
And that,
that's awesome.
That was that moment where it's like, that personal moment for me where it was stunned silence, but then you got to pay it off. And that first punch, and we were supposed to do more. I just jumped out of the ring because we had accomplished everything we needed to accomplish.
Less is more.
Yeah.
If we did more, killed it. Just that one punch told me, get gone. And that was okay. That was a good night, and that was a good night in Puerto Rico.
God bless Puerto Rico.
Oh,
God
you
bless
know
Puerto
what?
Rican
God
wrestling
bless-
fans.
Don't forget, Andy, we are going to do an upcoming episode. We have Savio Vega and Glamour Boy Shane who said they're going to come back in late January or February and do a Puerto Rico one. So
Maybe I'll try and get D'Lo back for that too.
Oh my!
I'll be happy. Be happy to be part of that. Be happy.
That's awesome. And we got to find Chicky Star. That was the other one on my list.
Yeah.
I want to get.
Oh,
on
I
there.
love that guy. I love Chicky Star. He
So
introduced me to Bacardi rum. Love Chicky Star.
Bacardi and Medallia.
Did you have
Bacardi,
any of his,
Medallia, and Castillo was Finlandia vodka.
you have any of his his coquito that he makes for Christmas?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Our other host, Tony Diaz, makes coquito
Yeah.
out of New Mexico. He sells it and stuff. That's a Puerto Rican thing, man. That's all we do.
Well, you know what?
I'll give you another quick thing. I'll give you another quick story.
Yes.
Puerto Rico, okay?
Yeah.
Yes, by all
There's
means.
food all over the island. Okay. So I remember driving with Chaz and with Andy, and we're doing this show in Cabo Rojo.
Okay, other side of the island.
Far side of the
Yeah.
island, okay?
Southwest side.
But we also knew there was this dude that pinchos out of his garage
Pinchos.
on the drive back. So we literally do the show, and we get in the car and drive as fast as we can. We want to get back to this guy's house. We pull in this driveway. We don't know him from Adam,
Yeah.
but he's making pinchos. And he's about to close. We're like, dude, we will buy everything you got. We'll buy everything you got. Just make them. And we probably had, 60 pinchos are like $1 a piece. Probably had $60 worth of pinchos that we just nibbled on the autopista back to San Juan.
And just all the little chicken and then the little slices of bread all
Chicken,
wrapped
little
up.
pork and the beef
everything.
with a little
It just-
piece of bread on it and a hot cross.
You ever go out to Piñones and they got all the stands out there?
Yes, I've been.
yes.
Yeah.
Pinchos everywhere you look.
Yeah, because
You got
Piñones wasn't too
pinchos
far
and
off from Isla Verde.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
you
yeah.
get the pinchos and the bacalao.
5-7 miles. right there.
Yeah.
You know what?
Oh,
You guys saved me because I was going to have my ignorance and ask you exactly what you were talking about, but you guys described it.
Yeah,
So thank you.
I figured I had to
yeah.
let you and let the uneducated know about the pinchos because
Thank you.
it's one of the
It's like a
greatest.
shish kebab.
Yeah, pretty
It's
much like a shish kebab.
Yeah.
It's crazy
Yep.
because I mean, again, I'm speaking to with these guys 20 years ago. I don't know if they still have it and what, but I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that you needed a license or anything. It was just people would just set up their barbecues and they have the grills on the side
They
of the
still
road.
do. on the way out to Pinones, the people will, on the side of the road just park their car there and set up a grill and just sell them. I mean, you don't have to have a permit or anything. You can just sell them anywhere, you know.
That's
awesome.
You have no clue. There was no health department. There's no.
No.
I don't know if this guy's clean or anything. But you know what? You knew after about 3 weeks on the island where the good pinchos were
Yep.
Yeah.
and where to stay away from.
They had to be cooked on wood. They're better on wood. They're not.
Cooked on
Yeah,
wood.
that's. Yep.
Excellent.
But it's awesome. I mean, like they were so delicious, and you think about it. I mean, because really, like they're not that unhealthy. So for like wrestlers, like post show to go and pick up, like $5, $10, $20 worth, like you're getting especially back then, you're getting a lot of food for that price. It was
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Man,
it was all steak or pork or
chicken.
chicken.
Yeah.
Chicken. Yeah, chicken's the
And
main
it
one,
was
but
nothing
yeah,
else. It was
steak
just
or pork.
it was meat on a skewer.
Yeah.
So there's like no
got some-
veggies. It's just meat on a skewer and a piece of bread on top. with hot
Yeah.
Yeah, a piece of bread and some sauce.
I'm so
yep.
for that. I am so for that.
Puerto Rico is
Yikes.
one of the best places for food, man.
Okay.
Mofongo?
okay.
And I'm not even going to go into the Coco Locos over the Empress Hotel
The Empress.
because golly, they would make this drink. I'm taking over the show now. They would make this drink. They would chop a coconut, the head up the coconut. They'd pour the milk out.
Yep.
They'd pour in like Bacardi and something else, and put that in coconut milk and mix it, and it would all be like a slushy. And they go, "Here you go," and 2 or 3 of those, and you were good night, Daddy. Good night.
Excellent.
And the consummate heel, but yet the outside doing the baby face. Andy Anderson never indulged in such beverages, so I
No,
was always
Andy Anderson
good to be the designated driver.
Yes,
No.
Andy never indulged, although I tried to tempt him a few thousand times.
Now you know what, when we just swing it back to what
Oh
we're
yes,
talking about
heels,
moments
right?
and moments.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny because the only other two that really popped in my mind that I remember ever seeing were that kind of thing is I thought maybe Andy might have picked up one of them because they were both from the AWA. And one of them, definitely in the later times of AWA, was a match between Playboy Buddy Rose and Doug Summers destroying the Midnight Rockers.
Ah,
The match where they kept beating them down. Shawn Michaels' first super big bloodbath, was that one.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back a little further, because it never happened to these kind of people, but to watch the Road Warriors destroy the High Flyers and Greg Gagne taking such a beating in the ring and no one would help him. No one could get in there because the Road Warriors were killing him. Were another moments where, wow, the heels really went crazy on those. And you don't get a lot of those, obviously. There's not a lot of that in wrestling history because why? Actually, why? Why doesn't the villain get that far ahead that much? Anyone?
That's a good question.
Because we remember it, so why is there not so many of them?
I think it might be societal now,
Mm-hmm.
where heels can't get that far ahead. Because if you think back to the old WA or AWA or old WWF, you could have a 9-month series with a babyface, and the heel can win 9 matches out of 10.
He'd
But if the
have
babyface
to.
won that, yes, and if the babyface won that 10th match out of 10, everything was good.
yeah.
But you have to tell that long-term story. And
Yeah,
I don't think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the heel had to keep screwing the baby face because once the baby face won, it was over.
Yeah, and it's like
That's how they kept it
the
going.
heels got. If you look at the match progression, the heel's got to cheat to win. Then the heel wins by countout. Then the heel uses a weapon to win, which leads to a no countout match or a DQ match. And the heel finds another way to win, which leads to a steel cage match where no one, it all builds on top of it, where I don't know if today's society can last with a 6-month-long storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about this before. It's a fast food society now. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going from week to week on TV or just to the next pay-per-view, and then it's over, and that's on to the next thing.
I honestly-
I remember growing up where my storylines lasted all summer long. Like they
Mhm.
took you through the summer. So you'd have something start in the spring and it would pay off in the fall.
Yeah.
I don't know if that could happen today.
Yep. And then when it was over in the fall, like WWE, then they start working in the fall all the way to WrestleMania, and then
Yeah,
all the
you-
blow off matches would happen at WrestleMania.
Absolutely. You built the 10 pole points in the year. I find this out now as being on the inside. But if you go back to your childhood, it was like you went from the spring to the fall, something happened, which led back into the end of winter, which led back into the spring, which led to the summer, which brought you back to the fall. It was like these 4 tent pole events that
Mhm.
you would build to, every 3 months. You didn't realize it as a kid, but that's how story arcs were.
Yeah.
Where they were, and if they were really good, it would carry through, not just 30 days, but 60 days to 90 days, and would bring you back a full circle to a year. And those were the good events. Like those are the good stories where guys would come together, they had their angle, they do this, they go away from each other. But there was always that tension between the two, and then they would come back together at the right point. And you'd be like, holy hell, here they go again.
I honestly, I think this whole thing with heels has changed because there's no super duper star babyface anymore. Like who is the top babyface right now? Drew McIntyre.
But
As
see,
great as
I'm gonna go against you
go ahead.
because there's no superstar babyface unless there's a superstar heel.
Right.
Yeah. No,
There has to be an anti-villain to create the hero. Anti-hero to create the hero. So without that mega guy who wants to be hated, you can't have an antagonist without a pro-antagonist.
Okay.
You can't have one without the other. So I can't say there's no mega babyface because there's no mega heel.
Okay. No, I
It was like
see
the
what
old
you're saying.
argument between Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. Well, who drew
Yeah.
WrestleMania? Did they come to see Hulk Hogan, or did they come to see Hulk Hogan beat up Roddy Piper?
Or
Same thing.
or did Roddy Piper get,
And, well, that's what I was trying to say was that you have somebody like Bret Hart was the top babyface, and then you have his antagonist in Shawn Michaels. I'm saying that I don't see that nowadays. Like we don't have, like there is no top babyface that like John Cena was probably the last one that you wanted to see get over and triumph. I think that's the problem is that we, like you said, I agree with you that you need both, but who is a babyface that's strong enough so that we can get him that villain? Because I think Bray Wyatt is the ultimate villain.
Yeah, you got to get the villain to make the baby
wait,
face.
hold on.
See, but I don't think Bray's enough of a heel.
Nope.
And
Not for
is
heat.
Bray Wyatt's not a villain. Bray Wyatt is a gimmick with a mask.
Okay.
A villain is not a guy who is going to wear a mask. A villain is a guy who wants to make your mother cry. That's a villain.
I see you.
I'll give you an Impact example. A guy like Sami Callihan who does not care what you think of him.
Yep.
Okay? He will spit in your face. He does not care. Which when you have that, then you have an equal yet opposite Eddie Edwards, who is now your good guy isn't just, pardon my French, bullshit good guy. It is he is there to fight off this guy, which elevates both. I truly believe without a top level heel, you can't ever talk face because if it's just Hulk Hogan is not created unless he beats Iron Sheik.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I see you.
Think about that.
The problem in today's business, a lot of it is with the big companies. Everybody's so worried about being so politically correct that you can't allow a heel to be a real heel.
Yeah, they can't get that heat. That heat.
Which comes back to the story of like having to apologize to a 5-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you mean there. Okay.
No, and I totally see what you're seeing, D'Lo, that you need that superstar heel to get the baby, because the baby face has to go on that journey to become that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You
okay, I
need the
got you.
giant dragon, because if you don't have the
Yeah.
dragon, big dragon doesn't make much of a dragon slayer when you're slicing little dragons and baby dragons.
If
I
you're
feel you, I feel you.
guys, if you're a dragon slayer and there's no dragon, some dude walking around with a sword.
Yeah.
Got you.
You're a
Like
weirdo
Drew
now.
McIntyre.
Drew McIntyre. Okay, that was brilliantly fun.
Okay, I want to throw something out here though, just because
Yeah.
we're just a thought, and I'd like to get everybody's opinion, but especially Dilo's on this. Now, because to me, up until recently, I would throw to you that one of the closest heels that we had was MJF.
Mm-hmm.
We had. Because at first when he came on, to me he was I thought he was doing things right, as everything despicable, and he was justified in everything that he was doing, what he's saying he believes in. He was doing nothing as far as trying to get people to like him, to be a cool heel. To me, he struck me as a heel,
Mhm.
which I thought was great. But I think this association with the Inner Circle, and especially, and I'm gonna throw this as the major knock, I think the song and dance,
Mhm.
an entertaining bit, sure, but
It
I think
killed.
that, to me, that
Killed
killed
him.
a lot of his heel heat and his reputation as a heel. Agree? Disagree?
Mhm.
I agree.
I agree.
My
Rick,
perspective
D'Lo?
on it, my
Yes.
perspective is
I
you
disagree.
have to let
But go ahead,
you
Steve.
have to let the story play.
Yep.
Because what if MJF is manipulating the entire Inner Circle to turn them babyface, and he's been working them the whole time?
Mhm.
So he did the part of what he had to do. He went in there and kissed the babies and sang the songs, only to ultimately give it to
Yep.
the whole Inner Circle in the end. That makes him a bigger heel because he manipulated the situation. So the story is not written yet. It is, you're judging an entire book by 5 chapters. Let the whole story play out and then look back on it and go, okay, he was the dude pulling the strings the whole time. What a dick.
Yep. I agree with that.
I hope you're right, because, and I mean, and Tom could
It's a
I don't
long
know.
5 chapters.
Yeah, but I mean, but this is something we've talked about, and we do another show, WPOV Global, and we talk about Dynamite and stuff, and that's been one of the biggest things from the get-go. Was our whole thing was that MJF was somehow going to infiltrate and either turn them babyface or boot out Jericho and have Jericho babyface. So I hope you're right.
And I don't. Once again, I'm just speculating. But what if his whole thing was to alienate Jericho? What if his whole thing was to take over the Inner Circle? What if his whole thing was to break up the Inner Circle because, as a heel, he felt that was too big to go through? So you break it up so you can then ascend to where you want to go without having to deal with all them.
But if
Okay.
it doesn't go that way, D-Lo, then do you think it did hurt him?
Well, then we'll come back and talk about that then.
No, and like I said, I hope you're right, because that's
Yeah.
something all along that you can go back and see. Then that's something we've talked about, was that right from the get go was that this is what it was, this is what it was, this is what it was. But to me, and this is for what I found and something that we've discussed is, on one hand we talk about having story development, taking time to development, but in some ways it's almost like this seems like it's almost taking too long, and the way that it's doing it is
Mhm.
the emotional investment that we look for isn't there right now, because it just seems to just be kind of just going along.
And
And
Sorry.
maybe the story's playing out too long. Maybe the story's playing, that's up to, here or there.
Yeah,
If he ultimately out heals the heels,
Mhm.
whether a month from now, whether it's a week from now or 2 months from now, he'll be a bigger heel because of it, because babyfaces couldn't destroy the Inner Circle, but this heel infiltrated and destroyed it.
Yeah.
yeah. I hope
That's
you're
pretty-
right. I hope you're right.
And
I
that would be
want-
pretty good.
Okay, and I want to equate it to, I guess, what Andy's saying here is maybe is like books. I read a ton of books, and if the first 5 chapters are shitty, I'm probably not going to read on. But
Mhm.
what happens in the story? Say I'm reading a Superman story, and the ending is brilliant. But what if in the beginning I see Superman changing and he's not a big muscular guy, he's a skinny little naked guy in a thing? That has damaged the rest of how I see Superman. No matter how the story turns out, I'm not going to unsee the horrible thing I saw. And I guess that's the problem I have, is no matter how great you can write yourself out of this, you can't erase what I saw. And what I saw took away a lot from me of what I see as a villain in my mind. And maybe it's just me. I can take that. Maybe that's just me and Andy's opinion. Maybe we're two old men howling at the moon. But at the same time, that's how I kind of see that, is sometimes you can write yourself too far out of a story where it doesn't matter if you have Hemingway writing for you at the end. That story ain't coming back.
No, and I agree. And sometimes you have your ending in mind, and you know where you want to go. And sometimes you go way into left field to get back to home base, and maybe left field is too far. Maybe you should only go into second base.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yes, I can understand that. And it's experimental writing, I guess.
Yeah. And then,
sometimes
like I said, it's everyone's taste.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know how far to go too far. The next will be that far out, and they'll be able to dial in.
True.
You know, just it's something to think about.
All right. Now,
It's tough. I'm just saying, just for Delo's sake, it's tough, and because I mean, you guys know this, and I say this because I hate playing fantasy booker, and that's not what I'm trying to do. Because to me, I always say it's like, you know, I've said this all along. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know, you know, who's hurt. You don't know who's got COVID. You don't know whose contract is this. You don't know who's in the doghouse with the office.
And that is what people don't know. That's 9/10 the battle.
Yeah.
You're dealing with 1,000 things that never plays out on TV.
Exactly.
And you're trying to build around a million invisible, and still trying to make a cohesive story that will make sense when it plays out. You know, Tuesday night 8:00 on Access TV. That's a plug.
There you go.
We'll let you plug it again at the end of the show. Trust me.
So like you're dealing with 1,000 things that no one else knows, and sometimes stories are extended because you have no other option. Sometimes stories are shortened because you have no other option. I think stories are best judged not while you're midstream, but they're retrospective, and you build on that. Like, let's see how it plays out, and then judge the arc of it, as opposed to let's not judge what could be 3/4 or half an arc or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's let it play out, and then go back and look at its entirety.
Yeah.
And then judge it there.
I agree. And I'm going to say, you know, take a look at William Shakespeare, considered probably one of the greatest writers in the world. There's parts of Hamlet that are absolute dog shit. Like, he probably is spinning in his grave going, I kind of wish I didn't write that chapter. And yet it's considered one of the best writings in the world. So yes,
well,
I do get that.
If you look at it from a wrestling perspective, sometimes you throw a main event out there to bring the crowd down, so your main event pops the couch.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's intentional that you create this hole in order to blow it up at the end. You know what I'm saying?
Now, Elio, do you have your hand up there for the last little while? Because it kind of looked like you were trying to weigh in. Sorry, I didn't want to. The rare time you were going to speak, I was like, I'm ready to hear. Did you have something?
No, I'm just
okay.
listening.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, now we're talking about heels, and there's all different kinds of heels. And heels tend to be, you know, there's the chicken shit heel, there's the big heel, there's the bullies. But I wanted to talk about one, and I don't see this one very often, and I just wanted to get you guys' opinion. Can this really work, or was it just a small cutaway from what I saw? But I want to go back into the mid-'80s in Stampede Wrestling to a wrestler whose name was, he called himself Muckin Singh at the time. He wrestled as Mike Shaw. You guys may know him later as Sebastian Booger and all these other crappy level characters that you saw. However, in this cutaway, when he was Muckin Singh, he was a 350-pound chicken shit bully. He was a big man. When you looked at him, he was massive, but he played the chicken shit heel all the time. He'd run away, he'd hide, he'd do all these things. Is that an effective, like they talk about, things work on small scale, and then when wrestling gets into the bigger times, like the indie versus the big times, is that a possible character, or did he was just in a fluke thing? Was he the only guy to really make that work? Because I haven't seen that a lot, where you have an extremely large, powerful man acting like the ultimate coward. Do you guys think that's just a small time thing?
I don't think so. I mean, you had Kamala, afraid of the Undertaker, he would do chicken shit stuff. You had Andre afraid of the snake.
Yeah, but that's just one little incident. I'm talking about a character that was his full character.
Yeah, well, then that's not. I don't think that'll play out. But I think you can have small moments in which they do that. I don't think that can last for a long time. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, you know what?
I agree. I think you can have moments in a character's development where he's scared. Who's doing a casket. But I don't think over a long-term career you can have a 350-pound guy who's a chicken shit.
Okay.
I just don't think that plays out in today's society because he's physically so big. It just doesn't. I don't think it goes against people what they see and what they feel, and when you get juxtaposing positions, you've lost people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it depends on the psychology behind it too, because Ric Flair, he wasn't 350-pound guy, but he would play the chicken shit just to draw you in and then poke your eyes.
Right.
By begging off in the corner or something. So he was acting like the chicken shit heel to get an advantage, but deep down then, was he really a chicken shit heel, or was he just, drawing him in, doing the old playing possum a little bit?
That's where it works.
Yeah.
Flair's not the biggest guy in the world, but he drew you in through his antics to bring you to a position where you can take advantage of it.
Right.
Okay.
That works. But when you're 350 pounds, you can't, when you're like Mike Shaw, you can't be that chicken shit. It doesn't even work. Like, if I use the bar fight mentality, okay?
Okay.
I'm looking at a 350-pound guy, and he's backing up for me. I'm going to be very cautious approaching him in real life. I'm not just going to walk in and have him take advantage of him because he's 350 pounds. But if he's 110 pounds and he's backing off, I'm going to walk in, take advantage of me. There's a difference.
Yeah.
So I don't think a 3-pound chicken shit heel works in any wrestler.
Yeah, and they tried that recently with Lars Sullivan, and they dropped it real quick. They tried to get us to feel sorry for him, and they call him a freak, and it's like, but dude, you're a freak. You're a giant. You're huge. You're 6'6", 300 plus, and it just didn't get over, and they just scrapped it real quick because it was just not believable.
See, I once again I just said it a second ago, the bar fight mentality. I use the bar. If it wouldn't happen in a bar, why does it happen in wrestling? So if you're 6'6", 300 pounds, you're not backing off to anybody.
Yep.
You're 6'6", 300 pounds. You're the aggressor.
Right.
Yep.
Other guy who should be backing off.
All right.
It just doesn't. People see it and it does not click in their head. Why is this big ass dude backing off?
It doesn't seem realistic.
Work.
Right.
No. So when a guy who's 5'11", 200 pounds, he can back off because he's baiting you in to kick your knee out, kick with the nuts, or poke your eye. That's okay. 6'6", I don't ever see him backing off from anything.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you know what, guys? We've talked about villains today, and we've talked about the impact of villains upon the story of wrestling. We've talked about them through the years, the changes, the psychology behind it. And you know what? We've probably only just scraped the surface. A very fascinating topic, and I want to thank each and every one of you who've weighed in today. Some incredible ideas to think about, and I want to thank each of you. And before we go, let's throw it out to our two main guests here. Let's give them some social media plugs that they want to throw out there, anything they want to promote. And we'll start off with D'Lo. Throw out anything you want to promote, social media, shows, whatever you want.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on here. And
Pleasure.
as you said, villains are a topic that as the alphabet. It goes from A to Z, Canada, Z. Wife's from Vancouver. And each version has a different layer upon a layer upon a layer. So it is the landscape of heels are vast, and it would take 10 shows of 5 hours long to try to get to the bottom of what a true heel is. But I appreciate you guys for having me on here and entertaining my thoughts and my perspective. And I want to thank everyone who's been here with me for joining me on this little ride. It's been fun. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on Twitter at D'Lo Brown 75, the only verified D'Lo. I talk wrestling. I talk Chicago Bears football and Liverpool soccer, those in the UK football. And then I talk wrestling. I talk wrestling time, and that's what I do. And you can find me and my work on Impact Wrestling every Tuesday night on Access TV. Another plug. And you can find some of the things that I'm involved with there. I'm a producer there, so I create some of the matches that you get to see. And look, I'm always up for an intellectual talk about wrestling. So if your fans want to reach out and talk, I am willing to have an intelligent intellectual conversation about wrestling. Mm-hmm. Please don't waste your time if you're going to call me an idiot or hate with my perspective. Yeah, no time for that. But if you want to have a true intellectual conversation, I'm sure any member of the panel would have that exact same conversation. I love talking this business and what it means to me. So please feel free to hit me up anytime you want.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Chief?
Well, you can find me at the usual places on Twitter at the Chief Atta, and then 2 pages on Facebook. I got Rod Atta Kula Kula and Chief Atta Kula Kula, which is a fan page. But most people are actually on my Rod Atta Kula Kula one. For some reason, that's built up bigger over the years. And then I'm also on Instagram too at Chief_Atta Kula Kula.
Thank you. And you know what? Sorry, D'Lo Brown. I know that Elio just wouldn't shut the fuck up most of the show, but I'm sorry he had to break in and just ruin it for us all. But anyways, folks, we want to thank you all. We've learned one thing today is that Elio is the true villain of this whole show. And absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning in. We have some more great stuff coming up. We'll see you next time, guys. Thank you. Elio, say goodnight to the good people.
Fans, we will talk to you all next week.